All right. So first and foremost, thanks so much for joining me on this beautiful Michigan fall day. I promise I am going to take you through Transaction Desk, kind of soup to nuts for everything that you need to know, as well as show you some of the new features that were released in Authentisign, making signatures a little bit easier and more convenient. So if I haven't got a chance to meet you, my name is Colleen DeLang. I am the Director of Education here at my Real Source. But the reason that I teach this class is not only have I been a realtor myself for 25 years, it makes me feel old when I say it that way, but I also worked at a company called Zipform, now owned by Lone Wolf, who is the creator of what I'm about to show you today. So probably when it comes to digital forms and digital signatures, I probably know a thing or two working at that company, and so that's why I actually teach this class. So first and foremost, before we go any further, I do want to make sure that everybody can see and hear me. As an instructor, there is nothing worse than trying to edit your class. That's right, we are recording it, so you can watch it later if you miss anything. But there's nothing worse than realizing, oh my gosh, you're 15 minutes into class and no one could actually hear or see you. So if I can just ask one person, anybody on this call will do, if you can just open up your GoToWebinar panel, which may be minimized to the right side of your screen or a little blue flower at the bottom. If you can just let me know that you can see and hear me okay, we'll go ahead and get started. So just if there's not, like I said, there's nothing worse than going back and editing. Thank you so much, Anna. I appreciate it. Like I said, there's nothing worse. You go back and you realize, oh my gosh, 12 minutes into it, nobody can hear anything. So technology is a funny thing. As I mentioned, if you do need to step away at any time today, hopefully to bottom line an offer or do something great like that, we are recording this class. I'm going to show you where you can conveniently find it. I'm going to show you where the cheat sheets are, because we're going to cover a lot of information. And I often hear at the end of this class, wow, that was a lot. Well, the average transaction in Transaction Desk takes about 7 to 9 minutes. But of course, I'm going to show you all the bells and whistles, so it's going to take a little bit longer than that. So bear with me today. We are recording it, so if you need to go back at any time and view something, maybe had to step away, take a call, or like I said, hopefully bottom line an offer, you can go right to that point where you missed. So let's actually start there. I'm going to turn off my very fuzzy hair today, and we'll get right into it. Now, I will tell you, if you have a listing, if you've just taken a new listing recently and you want to use that as an example, feel free to throw that in the questions box, and I'll actually use your listing, give you a little exposure for your new listing, and we'll also use it today for some good examples. All right. So first and foremost, where do you find the class recording? Where do you find upcoming classes? How do you see this class when it's 12 o'clock at night, you finally get the kids to bed and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I got to write a transaction. Where do you go to find this class? So let me show you where that is. You're going to log directly into Paragon, and Paragon's resources as kind of your agent toolbox. This is where you're going to find all of the tools that you have access to. Yes, I do still have the election theme up here. I will be changing it very shortly to the Thanksgiving theme. But if you go to your resources, think of this kind of as your agent toolbox, okay? This is where all of your tools are going to be located. And it's also where you're going to find Transaction Desk. You can log directly into Authentisign. But down here is really what I wanted to point out. In the education department, this is, of course, where you can go and check your Con Ed hours, your CE marketplace. This is where you can find upcoming classes that we have, but this is also where you can find all of our recorded classes. So it usually takes me about 24 hours to get the class recording edited and uploaded. But then when you click on recorded webinars, that will basically take you right to our YouTube channel. Then from here, the easiest thing to do is if you've recently taken the class, just click on videos, and that's going to show you all of our classes from Transaction Desk to the brand new Collaboration Center that was just released last week. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it yet, but I love the new enhancements. Kubacasa also just released some brand new enhancements in the free floor planning app. So if you haven't checked that out, that is also, they have added these hot spots that literally when you're looking at a floor plan, it will pop up a photo of where that was taken. It does some incredible interactive things now. So I'll kind of maybe take you on a quick tour of that at the end. So a lot of new product innovation, a lot of new updates. This is that time of year where a lot of software developers are pushing out those end of year updates to make sure that they have a really good fiscal year coming up. We've also added some new classes like tools for tackling the low inventory market. We've released some brand new tools that allow you to work directly with builders, to register your clients with builders. Cloud CMA has also come out with some new interactive features in their new Cloud interactive CMA program, where you can actually be sitting with a seller and pull properties in while you're talking to the seller to create your CMA. So it's got some really cool new functionality that's been added there too. So again, all of our classes are recorded. You can go right to resources. Just kind of a recap. You're going to go to resources under the education department, and that is our recorded webinar library. However, if you prefer live classes, kind of like I do as an agent of 25 years, I like to be able to ask real questions, which, by the way, you can do at any time in our class today. Just open up your GoToWebinar panel and type them in the questions box. But if you want to see more of our classes, and we've just released some new classes actually, you can go to the education corner. This is an online digital catalog of all of the classes that we have coming up. So again, if you're looking for help on Cloud CMA and using those new interactive features, doing a live CMA on the spot, you can actually click here and register. But we've also added some classes that are unique to my RealSource, and one that I'm really excited about. And I have to tell you, I took this class a couple of years ago, and it was amazing. Taylor Feedewall, who is our Director of Communications here at my RealSource, she has a degree in communications and photography. And what she actually does is she has a 3-part photos class. This class is all about learning to take better photographs in those hard to photograph areas. So I'm going to be honest, as an agent at that time, I had been in the business about 20 years. I thought I kind of took pretty good photos. I was kind of proud of myself until I took her class. And then I realized I did not take good photos at all. She showed me so many things I had no idea you could do with photographs. Like if you are, for instance, taking a picture of a long hallway, or taking a picture of a bridgeway in a home, you know how some of you take it, it looks short and dumpy, you really can't tell how long it is. She'll show you how, with critiquing those shots, how to add more light and aperture to elongate the shot, to show how long those bridgeways and those hallways are. She also, I call it her patented technique shot. She will take you in class 3 to an actually fully finished model, where she'll set you up in 6 or 7 hard to photograph areas. She has this patented shot that I guess I'd never really thought about it before this class, but she'll take you to like a small powder room where you're either in the mirror, right, which we hate seeing, or you've got the toilet like front and center in your shot. We all know it has a toilet. We didn't need to see that. But she'll show you some great ways to use angles like reflecting off of the counter into the mirror to get the entire room. I had no idea you could even do that. So it's a fantastic class. It is free, but space is limited. We just released these classes. They do start next week on the 19th. There is a part 1, part 2, and then if you finish both of those, she'll take you to that photo field trip I mentioned. So a lot of great classes coming up. Some of these classes are Con Ed approved, like our copyright class that's coming in January. So take a look at what we have up and coming. All right, enough of plugging the classes. Let's get to what we're here for. And I don't think I got anybody's address for an example, so I'm just going to go ahead and if you joined our call late and you have a new listing that you want to give a little exposure to, or you wouldn't mind using it for our example of writing a transaction today, just throw that in the questions box and we'll use it. All right, so from here, the hardest part of Transaction Desk is really just knowing where to start. In my opinion, that's where people get a little tripped up. Because really, when you're starting a brand new transaction, the last thing you want to have to do is go into a program, type out a bunch of information just to get started, right? There's two ways that I want to pull in the information. If I've just shown the property, and I'm going to use Sandy Nelson, I'm going to say that I just showed Sandy Nelson's beautiful new waterfront listing. My buyer loves it. We're ready to write up a transaction. We're ready to write that purchase agreement. The last thing I want to have to do is go in and fill out a bunch of forms with all the information that Sandy's already put into the MLS, right? Or if you're on the flip side, if you're on a listing side, why would you want to take a brand new listing and have to fill all that out? What if I told you you could actually pull 90% of what you need right in from the public records or the tax information? And the good news is you can do both of those things. So I guess that's where we'll start today. Since I didn't get anybody's example, I'm just going to grab one from our new listings here. So we'll grab. We won't use a lease. We'll use a little bit nicer one today. So let's go ahead. We're going to use Hawkins Court here. So basically, I'm going to pretend for just a moment, we'll pretend this is Sandy's fancy listing here. We want to go ahead and we want to write an offer on the property we just showed our buyer. So on every single listing ticket, and geez, I wish I was in this price range with a buyer looking for a house in this price range. That would be fantastic. But since I'm not, we're going to do a little pretending here. You're going to see all of these colorful quick action links. So instead of me going in and grabbing 19 different forms that my office requires and having to manually fill out all of these forms, I want to actually pull all the information that Sandy put into her listing ticket. So I'm going to look for this little blue splash. That little blue splash where it says start a transaction is really going to guide you to not only take all the information for this property, but it's going to take it even one step further. All of those, let's say, seller's disclosures, lead-based paint disclosures, everything that this agent has added under associated docs that buyer would normally have to sign, all of those documents accompany the transaction as well. So instead of me having to send the buyer, let's say you're not with the buyer, you're preparing the offer, the last thing I want to do is send out the offer, the buyer representation agreement, which you probably already are supposed to have signed, as you probably already know. But the last thing I want to do is have these piecemealed. So I want to have my buyer representation agreement signed before I show the listing. Then once we're ready to write that offer, now I want to send out my purchase agreement. I want to send out my agency disclosure. I want to send all of those documents, my addendum, maybe it's an FHA addendum, whatever it happens to be. I want to send all of those documents to the buyer for signing. But the last thing I want to have to do is now go in and download a bunch of additional documents, like the seller's filled out disclosures. Or if there's a survey, or if there's a hold harm list in the associated documents, I want those to automatically flow right into the file for me. So let's do that. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to say that this is Sandy Nelson's new listing. We just showed it. We're ready to write an offer. We're ready to start that transaction. So we're going to use that blue, kind of looks like a blue tidal wave, if you will. And we're going to pull all of that information right into the transaction. So now it needs to know a little information. Like first, who do you represent in the transaction? Well, we know that Sandy listed it. So I'm going to say that I am the selling agent. The other thing is already pulling in information from the MLS, but now I want to go in and I want to add my broker setup template. So the idea is now not every brokerage has their template set up. I am aware of that. I'm going to show you some pieces that you can put together on your own if you don't have broker setup templates. But I will tell you, if you are a broker or an office manager, by assembling all of the forms for your agents to use, it's great risk mitigation. One, it makes sure that all of the appropriate forms are being used every time they take a new listing or every time they write a new offer, that all of those forms are there. They don't have to go try to find them. The other thing is it also provides risk mitigation because you as the broker or manager can even fill out legal language on those forms and save it into your template. So if you are filling out things like see line 37 on the purchase agreement for other terms and conditions, something like that. If you're commonly referring to that, or seller to pay concession amounts of X, you can actually fill that all in as the broker, so it can actually be set up for your agents just to fill out the blank lines. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So we're going to add in I'm going to use my company buyer package, because that's going to have all of the buyer forms that are required. And of course, I'm going to say that I am the selling agent, and I'm now going to go ahead and I'm going to start that transaction. Now, the key here is, if you're new to Transaction Desk, well, the first few times you're going to want to use the wizard. It'll automatically open things up for you. It'll walk you through the entire transaction process. But I'm also going to show you today how you can set this wizard up on one easy and convenient dashboard, so that you can do everything you can do in the wizard from the screen that your transaction starts on. But let's actually start here. Because we've pulled the information over from the MLS, you can see it's already started to auto-populate the address, the city, the county, the state, the zip code, subdivision, lengthy legal description, the township, the tax numbers, the comments. Everything is already coming over from the MLS. But now, of course, we're going to take it a step further. Think of this wizard, whether you are on the listing side or the buy side. Remember, this is kind of a generic wizard. So of course, you're just going to be filling out the information that pertains to your side of the transaction. So as I scroll down, because I'm working with the buyer, I'm going to want to pay attention to the purchase information, because you can see a lot of the listing information has already flown in from the MLS. So I'm going to say that, it's a crazy market. Sandy listed this yesterday. I want to make sure it doesn't get away from us. So we're going to offer $730. Thanks for being my example today, Sandy. And maybe we're offering a $10,000 EMD. There's also a place, if you are countering and you're asking for an additional deposit, you can put that in there. But here's a couple of things that I like to do in these classes. I want to show you some time-saving tips, things that you may not have known. Like, did you know if you go over to where it says property includes over here, even though it looks like it's on the listing side, did you know if you add things like the stove, built-in microwave, whatever it happens to be, if you add in those items, they will actually auto-populate into all of the places on your purchase agreement or on your addendum that asks for what you're including on your purchase agreement. So if I want to reference, maybe even the pool equipment in the backyard, whatever I want to put here, it's going to carry that over and auto-populate that into not only my purchase agreement, but if I have addendums, like my company happens to have 3 addendums, unfortunately, where we put the appliances and anything additional that we're asking for. So it's not only going to carry it into our purchase agreement that I'm going to show you, but it's going to carry over to those other forms as well. Kind of works the same way for property excludes. If they have a hideously ugly above ground pool in the backyard that you want to have removed before sale, I'm going to say if you want to have that removed before closing, I can type that in right here, and that's also going to auto-populate. So those are 2 little quick tips that you may not have known. If you use the property includes and excludes, it will carry those over to all the appropriate places in your transaction. But really, that's as easy as it is, right? Step 1, we've brought over all the information. The only thing we really have to do in step 1, of course, is put in what our purchase price is going to be. What does that buyer want to offer? There's really nowhere to pull that except from our buyer's head, right? So we're going to go ahead, now we're going to jump to step 2. And this really has to do with dates. And we're going to kind of stay a little bit middle of the road today. I know some people are brand new to the industry. They're just learning Transaction Desk. We have a couple other people on the call who are using it in more advanced ways, like they're using it with their teams. They have placeholders. They have mandatory document attachments that they have to upload. So we're going to kind of stay in the middle today, but I'm going to show you some cool ways that if you'd like to take it a step further, you certainly can. So from here in step 2, it's really asking us, well, what dates are we referring to? So if I am writing the offer today, I am just going to go to today's date. I'm going to click on it and it's going to insert that date not only into the wizard, but every place that's calling for an offer date. Maybe you're giving them and your offer is going to expire in 3 days. You could actually put that in here. With TRID, we saw the 2 additional dates of when are you going to apply for your mortgage? When will you have your mortgage commitment? Those are here as well. Now, if you're just getting started with technology, then that might be all you need. You just want to insert those dates into your forms. However, if you are a broker or if you are looking to automate it a little bit further, you can use what we call tasks or checklists. Now, you don't have to. This is completely optional, so don't feel overwhelmed here. But for me, I like to have things as reminders. One, I work as the director of education full-time at my real source. So when I sell a few properties a year, I like those helpful reminders to, oh, don't forget to check on that final water read before closing. Or, oop, I do want to make sure that the sign was installed yesterday. So those types of things can actually be automated in the system. So let me kind of take you through a quick tour of that. Again, this is completely optional, but for me, I really like it. I think it sort of simplifies things. So I'm going to go over to the right side here on your screen. And one of the items you're going to see is checklists and tasks. So let me explain what those are. First, a task is just a reminder. What are you doing in this transaction that maybe you want to automate or not forget? And then a checklist is just a series of tasks that either an office manager can set up or a broker can set up, or even you as an agent can set up some reminders that every time you start a transaction, it sort of sends those automated messages so you don't miss a step. So let's kind of take a look at how that works. So for tasks, I'm going to jump out of our wizard for just a second. We'll use a nice, easy one. Let's say that Sandy Nelson, who lists a lot of beautiful waterfront properties, she wants to make sure that she has a sign that's installed on each and every property, and she just kind of wants to automate that process. So she's going to click, I want to add a task. So I'm going to say install a lockbox, install a sign, whatever you want it to be. You could even put a little further description if you wanted to. But we want to tie this to something in the transaction. Now, she's never going to have a date, like a specific date, when you're dealing with transactions. At least I've not found a good example of one yet. Like every October 1st, you're not going to install a sign, right? That wouldn't make any sense. But if we relate it to a transaction date, like you want to have the sign installed one day after the listing paperwork is signed, that makes a little more sense. Or if it's something like you want a reminder after the home inspection to check on the title work, you could actually relate it to a task being marked complete. And you can even take, again, you could take this a lot further if you're a broker. You can set up things that are mandatory and reminders, but we're going to stay kind of run-of-the-mill today. So we're going to say that we want to relate this to a transaction date. So Sandy is going to make sure that one day after the list date, that a reminder goes out to the person who's in charge of putting up her signs. Or you could even add your sign installation company here. So she's going to say, I want a reminder that day, maybe the day before, 15 minutes before. And if she has somebody doing that task for her, she can actually, in her preferences, add that person as a sharer, and then it can automatically send an email to that person saying that she's listed a brand new listing and they need to install her sign. She can also notify them if anything's changed on the transaction, and she can also be notified herself to make sure that that notification or that reminder went out. So really easy to set up tasks. Again, it's only if you're looking to take it to the next level. If you just are using TransactionDesk for the basics, the filling out the forms, then you don't have to go there. You could just simply fill in your dates as we were doing, and then you could jump over to step 3. But if you are looking to take it a little bit further, we do have an advanced class that shows brokers how to set up clauses, mandatory placeholders, and kind of takes it to the next level, making it a little bit easier for the agents. All right. So this is probably one of the biggest questions that I get. I get when I help out in support, I often get, well, Colleen, I took your class. I'm trying to go through this, but you have to add in the person's name on all these forms. Why does that happen? Well, it's because you missed this one important step. By the way, if you remember nothing else, remember about this step. Because if you follow these simple instructions, it will actually save you a good 15 minutes when you're trying to use Authentisign. Let me show you what I mean. So automatically it's brought in who listed the property, what company they were from. It's of course brought in me as working with the buyer, but now I need to add in that buyer's information. So we're going to go in, we're going to hit add. And of course, you could create yourself. Well, we did that for you. You could pull in from an existing contact if you worked with them before. But in this case, we're just going to create a brand new buyer from scratch. Here is the thing that you want to remember. If you will just take the time to tell TransactionDesk who this person is, what role they play in the transaction, it will not only remember to put the buyer's name underneath each signature line where the buyer is supposed to sign, but it will pre-tag all of your forms, making Authentisign just mere seconds to send documents out. If you don't do this step, then you'll need to manually go in and tag all the places where the buyer is going to sign. And that certainly takes a lot longer. So by simply selecting that this person I'm adding is the buyer, the program is smart enough to know where all of those signing blocks should go and that this person is going to be signing as the buyer. So all we need to do now is put in the buyer's name. So we're going to call this Barry Buyer and that buyer's email address. So we are going to call, I'm going to put in mine, but it would be barrybuyer@mailinator.com or whatever it happens to be. But I'm going to put in mine so when we get into the signing, you can actually see the full process and how it goes out. Then there are these 3 additional blocks, and I get a lot of questions on these. And basically for 90% of the buyers that I work with, just Barry Buyer, their email, you could even go in and put an address in for the buyer if you wanted to. Usually that's all I have to put in. However, there are 3 additional lines in case you are working with a power of attorney. Maybe you are working with someone on behalf of an estate. Maybe they're signing on behalf of a corporation. That's what these 3 lines are set up for. So if the attorney wants Barry to sign Barry Buyer, power of attorney for Sally Sue, that's how it could be pre-printed underneath the signature line. If the attorney simply wants them to sign that way, it can pre-generate their signature as Barry Buyer, power of attorney for Sally Sue. So it allows you to use these, again, in cases of power of attorneys, estates, if they're signing on behalf of a corporation, if they're not just signing Barry Buyer, but they're signing Barry Buyer on behalf of someone, that's what these would be used for. Today, we're going to keep it nice and simple, so we're just going to put in Barry Buyer. Now, of course, if Barry was married or another person was also a partner on this transaction, then you would go in and you would add them separately because, of course, they're signing on separate lines, right? It's never Barry and Sally Buyer on one line. It's always 2 separate lines. All right. If you are working with an attorney, be sure to add them into your contacts as well, because I'm going to show you one of the new attorney roles that were added that allows the attorney to review documents and either accept or decline before it goes to their client. So a lot of cool attorney features here too. All right, so let's go ahead and hit next. Now, I'm going to be honest, when I started working with TransactionDesk, this really confused me because as an agent, I was always taught documents and forms were kind of the same thing, but they're clearly different in here. One, we're looking at forms. So what is the difference between step 4 and step 5? Step 4 is forms. Step 5 is documents. In my head, I kind of always thought they were the same thing, but they're a little bit different in TransactionDesk. So let me explain. In TransactionDesk, Forms are going to be anything that Transaction Desk has gone in and set up so that you can fill in the blanks, so that you can review them and fill them out. Documents are anything that you're bringing in from outside. So let's say Sandy Nelson just sold a house and she has the home warranty document in there. Maybe she has a copy of the EMV check. All of those would be brought in from outside. So those would be considered documents. When we get to the document step, you're going to see that one of the cool pieces is a lot of those documents are automatically brought over into the transaction for you. So stay tuned. I promise it'll get good. So on the forms part, because I applied my packet or my template that my office has set up, you can see all the bazillion forms that my office requires. And there are a lot of them. That's just a few of them, by the way. All of those forms actually auto-populate and set up on the form list. Now, I'm going to be honest, I'm kind of old school. If anybody remembers Marge Frazier from back in the day, I used to love her. She was a great real estate teacher. She always made it so fun. But she always would say, you know what, Colleen? Always, always, always start with your disclosure. Now, by now, of course, I've already signed my buyer representation agreement, right? Have I said that enough? I'm trying to make my boss happy so he knows that we say it like over and over in every class. But the next thing I was taught is, you know what, really my disclosure, even though my brokerage set it up this way, I want my disclosure to be the first document that my buyer sees. And I like that for a couple of reasons. One, I was just always taught that. And two, I like the fact that it's a nice, easy to understand form. And before I give out any additional information, they have that in front of them. Okay. So you can simply grab a form and drag and drop it into any location you want. So if your broker didn't set up the packet like you think it should be in your head or how you want it to go over to your buyer, remember, you can always just grab it and drag and drop that into the location you want it to be. And that's how those forms would then go out. A couple other things. If you're looking at all of these forms, and if by chance they have forgotten a form, which you can clearly see probably has not happened on this packet, but let's say they forgot a pool addendum or an FHA addendum, something like that. You can always go in and add additional forms. So I'm going to click on Add. Now, one of the things I think that's a little confusing is when you open that up, there are so many forms. There's over 4,000 forms in this library that I'm looking at in all these different libraries. Of course, you've got GMAR, Shiawassee, Grosse Pointe, Lenawee. I mean, it's so many forms, it's a little overwhelming. So instead of going through all of these libraries and trying to figure out, okay, which is the seller's disclosure I use, which would be the pool form I use, here's a little tip. Go right up to this search bar, just hit pool, and it'll show you every form relating to a pool. So I can say, yeah, I'm going to use my company pool and hot tub form, and I'm going to add that to my transactional forms. Again, I can put it in any order that I want. If I want to take a look at a form or kind of preview it ahead, maybe I want to just make sure that that is the purchase agreement I want to use, I can click on those menu dots to the right. I can click on preview, and I can kind of take a look at that form just to make sure that, oh, yep, that was the form that I meant to add in. So really simple, very easy. You can bring in those outside forms. Of course, you could remove a form that you're not using. Personally, don't do that because when I'm sending them to my client, I'm only going to send them the ones that pertain to their transaction. So if it doesn't pertain, I just don't email it or use that particular form. But sometimes, if you want a nice clean transaction and they're not used, let's say it's not an FHA or VA deal and you want to remove it, you certainly could by going to the menu dots, just clicking on delete, and it will remove that form from your transaction. All right, so let's talk about some cool ways that you can take it a little bit further. And before we do that, I'm going to jump over to the next step, which again is documents. Documents, remember, is just those outside documents, but here's where it gets really cool. The bylaws, this great agent, because you can see they've added the subdivision bylaws right here. I love that. I also like it, if you are showing condos and you can actually see the bylaws in the associated docs, or you can find out before you show it if they can have dogs. I mean, I personally really like that. So it's bringing over all of those documents, and you could send this right out to your buyer at the time of writing the offer. Another thing is, remember we talked about the seller's disclosure and lead-based paint disclosure that seller filled out? Well, that's automatically here. So if I do a preview, I can actually see and now email and have my buyer sign the seller's disclosure and lead-based paint disclosure from that listing. Makes it a lot easier than trying to pull all these different pieces from different places. So hopefully that makes sense. All right, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to give some real life examples. So let's say Sandy is sitting at her desk and an agent walks in with a paper offer. Still happens, I know, not often, but every once in a while. And Sandy wants to bring that into her transaction, and she wants to do a nice counter on it. She doesn't want to do the chicken scratch with a pen and then send it back. She actually wants to bring it in, and she wants to do the counter and then have her client sign it right in Authentisign. So Sandy can simply go to the add button here, and she could drag and drop. Let's see if I have anything in my, oh yeah, okay. So I was working with Lisa Harris teaching a class earlier this morning. So we'll just pretend that this is Sandy's offer for a moment. She could literally drag and drop up to 20 files onto this little blue strip, and it will pull it right in, as you can see very quickly, right into her transaction. So if she wanted to add, let's say, a home warranty that was filled out or pre-title, she can literally just click on add. She can grab that file or that PDF. Again, you could do up to 20 at one time, and you can add it right in so that it immediately is part of your transaction. So let's say she did that. Let's say she brought in that offer, just do a little pretending for the sake of time, and she now wants to mark up that offer. She wants to counter it. Maybe she's asking for a little higher price. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on preview just to kind of see the offer. And what you probably notice right now, I'll try to blow this up a little bit. Sometimes on the live streaming, it looks a little smaller. You can see how much auto population is already being pulled over. Of course, it's got the listing brokerage, the listing agent ID, the office ID, the emails, phone numbers, faxes, property address. Of course, it's got my information for my side of the transaction as well. As we scroll down, it's got that, remember we said above ground pool to be removed before closing, those things that are excluded or included. So all of that is starting to flow. We've got our $10,000 EMD, we've got our price. But let's say Sandy's looking at the $730 price here, and she says, you know what, well, first, my clients are not going to agree to remove the pool. So what she wants to do is she basically wants to counter it, but she doesn't want to just chicken scratch it up, right? She wants to make it look professional. If you know Sandy, you know she's always professional. And so she's going to go over to this markup tool. Kind of looks like a painter's palette right here. And she's now going to mark this up. Let me blow it up so you can see it a little bit better. She's now going to mark this up so she has a professional looking counter offer. The first thing she might want to do is she might want to use the line tool. These are just basic PDF tools. And you're simply going to put a line through that. Now, I do want to say here, because I got myself in a little bit of trouble a couple months back, check with your broker on what your policy is for crossing things off. I was unaware, but we had a couple people from the Midland Board of Realtors, because we invite our vendor MLSs onto these classes as well. And up there, I was told that they do not allow any cross-offs on their documents whatsoever. They have to have any changes on a special addendum. So if you are coming from one of our vendored MLSs and this is not your policy and your board does not allow this, then check with your broker on your policy. So this one, for me, for my brokerage, we would just obviously have to have everyone initial as agreeing. So the buyer and seller would need to agree and initial with this change. But if you come from one of our vendored MLS boards and you have to have a special addendum from that, then obviously use your rule. Every board is different and every MLS is different. And quite honestly, many of the brokerages are different. So do check with your broker and your board to see what your policy is. So we've crossed off that the above ground pool is not going to be removed because Sandy said, clients have already moved. They're not going to be able to take care of that. We're crossing that off. But what about the price? Now, let's face it, if you just did an ugly cross off here, that would be horrible, right? It wouldn't look very professional at all. And if you know Sandy at all, you know that would not fly. So what she's going to do is she's actually going to make a nice, clean counter. And what she would do is she would go up to this text box here. And I like to kind of do this where there is no writing. It makes it just a little bit easier, especially because I have OCD and I like things to match. Like, it really bugs me when like the fonts and things don't match. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to say that Sandy is asking for $745,000 for her new listing. I wish I could get in this price range. That never seems to happen to me. But now, if you actually used that, you can see how horrible that would look, right? I mean, I would go crazy. So I want to change that. I want to right click. And of course, I'm going to change it from, you could change the font type, and we'll do career. I think that's a little bit closer. But we also want to change the size of that font. I can clearly see that's probably an 8 or 9. We'll try 9. You can make it bold or italicized. And you can see we're a little closer, but whoa, that looks even worse, right? Now you can't read it at all. So in order to get a really clean counter, now you could do a cross off and you could simply set this above if the writing was very tight. But for me, I'd rather have it a nice clean counter so there's no confusion. So I'm going to change this from transparent to white. So as I'm rewriting our offer, I'm going to kind of just make it, and I'm going to shrink this box down here a little bit. I'm kind of get wild and crazy trying to do this one-handed. I'm going to shrink that box down, and I generally will do this where there's not a lot of text. I'm trying to show you where there's not a lot of text so you can see it. I will generally do it on any spot like this where there's not a lot of text, and then you can simply drag it to the location that you want to lay it on. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab this. I'm going to drag it to that box, and my OCD would actually keep me working on this, making it a little bit tighter and a little more cropped, but for the sake of time, I'm going to let it go. You can make the font a little bit bigger, a little bit larger. Again, you can adjust the size of the box so it fits even better. The point is you want to make it nice and clean. So you've got a nice, clean counter. And you can do that again by simply right-clicking and changing your transparent background, which would look very messy if we just laid that over there, to a nice clean. If you would rather just lay it on top so that you have what you originally offered, you can do that too. So if I wanted to do a line through it and I wanted to just lay it on top, you could do that as well, just personal preference. So I'm going to just strike that off like that so you can still see it. And then we've got our 745. So they're PDF tools, not hard. There's quite a few of them. If Sandy wanted to point out, she just got them a 2-year home warranty, and she wanted to show that, she could actually use the highlighting features. There's single highlighting if you just want to highlight something, in a particular paragraph. I have to be honest, I'm not a fan of this one, which is the free drawing. I find it a little bit cumbersome. I prefer more of the highlighting or cross-offs. And then the last one is a redact. Again, Marge Fraser used to say you should never leave a blank line. So a redact is really just designed so that you could show that that line is not empty. And of course, you can move it up or down, make it larger or smaller, but it's really just designed to show that no line was left empty. Okay. All right, so those are the tools for countering. Again, if you do have any questions, don't be shy, throw them in that questions box and it will alert me and I can go ahead and address them. It's a little bit easier if you type your question. If you raise your hand and you don't have a microphone set up, that can be a little bit tougher. All right, so we've gone in, we've made changes to our counter. Now we want to go ahead and we're going to have our clients sign or initial that. One other thing that I like to show though, I'm not going to save these changes, I'm just going to jump out, is that let's say Sandy sent her clients their buyer agency agreement, their purchase agreement, and all of the documents that they needed to sign, excluding the buyer representation agreement, which you already signed before showing the property. Hopefully I said that enough. At this point, Sandy has one signed PDF back, right? The buyer signed everything, she's got it back, but Sandy's in her car driving to a board of directors meeting, and she just wants to send the documents that the co-oping agent needs, minus the buyer's agency, which has your client's phone number, has what your client was looking for, what your client was going to spend, all of those documents she wants to keep private. She doesn't want to send those. So how would you do that? So let me kind of show that too. There is something in TransactionDesk called the document slicer. And I love this tool because I'm constantly on the go. I might be driving to a different board to teach. And the document slicer tool is basically where you can take any PDF, whether you have one document or 20 documents. I'm just going to show it in here just for the sake of time. But you can slice pages off or documents off so that they don't go to the co-oping agent. So again, a good example would be if Sandy sent everything to her buyer to sign, but that buyer agency agreement has confidential information that Sandy does not want to send to the co-oping agent, but she's in her car, she's using the app, and she just wants to take that one page out so she can email it right to the co-oping agent so they don't take someone else's offer. So that's when you're going to look for this little document slicer tool. Now you'll find this in both the app and TransactionDesk itself that we're looking at right now. It's called the document slicer tool, and this is exactly how it works. It looks like a page with a couple pages ripped out, so you know that's exactly what it's going to do. But let's pretend for a moment that these last 2 pages of this document were her buyer agency agreement, and it's got the buyer's phone number, what the buyer wanted to spend, the buyer's address of where he's living now, and she does not want these 2 pages to go to the co-oping agent. So what she's going to do is she's going to say, yeah, I want to send this, 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 and this to our co-oping agent, but I do not want to send those last 2 pages. So she's simply highlighting those 2 pages, and she's going to go up and she's going to hit save. I always like to keep my originals as originals. So I always like to do a save as. That way I can see the original document, or I can see what was originally signed, and now I have a copy of just what I like. So I'm going to say, this is an offer for Sandy Nelson. And obviously I want to save this so I can email it right to her as the co-oping agent. And I'm going to hit save. And what you can see is it now just shaved those 2 documents off, and I can email those over to her right away. All right, so it makes it just a little bit easier if you're in the car or you need to remove a confidential page that you don't want that co-oping agent to see. You can do that right from there. All right, again, you could put these in any order that you wanted. We're going to slide over to our last step. I already showed you how you can bring in those documents. So congratulations, you've completed the entire wizard. Now I know what you're thinking. That seems like a lot. Well, on average, that process will take you anywhere from 7 to 9 minutes. I just wanted to show you all the bells and whistles that are sort of hidden in there so that you can actually be pretty familiar with all the extras that you can do. Now, of course, the most important thing is, before we're getting ready to send those documents out, I'm going to want to go in. I'm going to want to click open those documents. You can just click on the name of the document. And this is where I want to go in and I want to review them. So this is where I want to make sure all the appropriate information is carrying over. So if I want to jump to the next form, I just go right to where it says transactional forms and click on the form I'm ready to review. So I can jump from form to form. This is what we call the forms editor. This is where you're going to make any changes to the information. So if something auto-populated that you didn't want to show up in here, this is where you would go in and change it. And there's a couple things I'm going to show you as we get into signing that can even make this even easier. One of the things that I wanted to show you is clauses. This is something that we're going to talk a lot more about, especially with the NAR and MLS practice changes that were made. Obviously, with the NAR lawsuit, a lot of new language has come up, new forms has come up. And so a lot of people are saying, well, how are we supposed to write that on the purchase agreement? This is all new to me. How do we break it down? So what we're encouraging brokers and managers to do is to set up how they want that written. So that new language that is, that agents are just now really getting comfortable with, how do we set that up in a way that you can add it to a form without having to recreate it? And what I mean is, especially new agents, they often struggle with how would I write that? And let's face it, we are not attorneys, right? We shouldn't be writing our own legal language. We should use what brokers have already set up for us. So one of the things you can use is clauses. So let's say I am filling this out and I want to use Sandy, my brokerage's clause that she set up for seller concessions, or maybe I want to state what the commission that's going to be paid on here, and I want to use the language that she has set up for that. So I can go up to where it says clause, and this is where I can see office-wide clauses that maybe Sandy set up for her brokerage. It's also where I can see personal clauses that maybe I set up. So maybe I want to insert that the buyer has 7 to 10 days to complete all home inspections, and they must be in writing. As you can see, you can even create folders to keep your legal language handy. So if agents want to know what they should use for home warranties, home inspections, buyer representation clauses, you can actually set up different folders to keep it all very organized. If you have OCD like me, you appreciate that. You can also do things like leaving a blank line. So maybe you want to spell out concessions, but you really don't want to put an amount. You want the agents to determine what that's going to be. So it allows you to kind of set the framework for the legal language, but they can still edit it or add things to it if they need to. So I'm just going to grab two just to kind of show you how they work. I'm going to hit OK. And you can see very quickly, all that information, had I finished that clause, would have been even better, is now auto flowing in here. If I want to make a change, maybe I want to add in that the home warranty cannot exceed, maybe I need to change this, maybe it's going to be $500. Seems like they're getting more expensive by the day these days. So I'm going to go ahead and I can actually make that change. But the framework or that legal language is there from my broker to be able to just pull it into my transaction. I don't have to create my own legal language, which I think would make my broker very happy. They don't like us doing that. All right, so under file, I can go in, I can add new forms at this point. I can save forms. It does auto save every 30 seconds for you. So if you do lose your internet connection, you don't have to worry. It's still going to be there for you. The only way to save outside of Transaction Desk is in a locked PDF. So what I mean is you can never save this form to your desktop and go in and make changes. It will only allow you to take it out of the program in a locked PDF. And there's actual legal reasons for that. The associations and brokers own the forms, and they don't want people going in and trying to erase what's already put in there. You can also copy forms. For a long time, I had people ask me, why would you copy a form? And, sometimes you'll copy an addendum, or I use this for sellers' net sheets. That's the only one I could really think that I would ever copy. And the reason I do that, I like the net sheets in here. And I generally, when I'm sitting with a seller, I'll do one at the higher end of the price range and then one at the lower end of the price range, so they can see usually within a few dollars of what they're going to have after closing in their pocket. And so for me, I don't want to have to go in and re-enter a home warranty and what the commission is going to be and what this is going to be, what that's. I just would rather have it all spelled out there so you can actually copy and then just go in and tweak the math. So that I thought was a really good example of one form that you may copy. Most of the time, we don't really copy forms. You, of course, could erase a form. You could print a form. You could also send that offer that we just created for Sandy Nelson. We can send that via email. You can fax it. Of course, you could mark it up. So really easy to send those documents out. And by the way, you can send out both documents and forms in one step. And I'm going to show you that as we go forward in the signing process. So congratulations, you went through the entire wizard. You created an entire transaction. So we now represent the buyer. We've got all of our buyer forms. All that's left to do now is, of course, to send these over to our buyer for signatures. But before we do that, I kind of want to go through the listing side, because as I mentioned, the hardest part of Transaction Desk is knowing where to start. So just kind of a real quick moment of recap. When you are on the buyer side, The information is usually in the MLS 99.9% of the time, unless you maybe sold a for sale by owner, or it was never listed and you did a one-party listing, something like that. But 99.9% of the time, you've shown the property, you're ready to write the offer. So you're going to go into the MLS, you're going to find that blue splash, and that's how you're going to pull all the data in. But on the other side of the fence, when you are on the listing side, I don't want to trust that that agent who had it listed 5 years ago put that listing incorrectly, right? I want to make sure I'm pulling that from a more trusted source. I want to pull that directly from the public records data. So in that case, I'm going to start a little differently. So that's what I said. That we think about it this way. The most challenging thing, I think, is where do you start? On the buy side, you're always going to start in the MLS. You're going to look for that blue splash because all the data is there. On the listing side, though, that's when we're going to go in and we're going to go right to TransactionDesk to pull from the tax records. So let's go into resources. Remember, this is your agent toolbox. This is where you're going to find all of your great programs like Cuba Casa, where you sign up, Showing Time, Cloud CMA, New Home Source Pro. And here's a little tip. We have a brand new product coming out next month. And it's one I think you're really, really going to like. I can't tell you yet because we just finished signing with our attorney, but we are already working on the integration, and next month that'll be released. So stay tuned. It's going to be a good one, I promise. From here, though, we're going to go right into TransactionDesk. Now we're on the flip side, right? We're going to start a brand new transaction. So I'm going to go right over here to the left. This is basically your transaction list of all of the transactions, the transaction we just did. But now we want to start a listing. So we're going to start a new transaction. Again, following that same theme, we're going to click on Add. And we're going to call this 41539 Wessel, my good old trusty example. By the way, some people like to put their client's name in here instead of the address. You can do that. I'm not a fan of that, simply because if Bob Smith hopefully buys more than one house from you, you could have 3 Bob Smiths in your list, and it's really easy to get confused of which transaction is which. So if you're going to do that, I would recommend just doing the address and then doing the name. Now, obviously, we're going to be on the listing side here, so I'm going to apply my listing packet. Now, brokers, when you're setting up your packets, you see how when I selected my listing packet, it automatically said, well, if you're creating a listing, you must be the listing agent. So you can actually set it up so when they apply the packet, it even does that for them. By the way, you have 4 options. You could be the listing agent, the selling agent. You could be a transaction coordinator, or hopefully you're double dipping it and you're doing both sides of the transaction. So you just are picking, if you have it set up in your brokerage that every time you do a listing that you are the listing agent, it'll automatically import that too. But here's the secret button. If we just did this, we would have to go in and manually add in all of the transaction information. That would not be fun. So how do you bring that right into the transaction from the public records data? And that's with the import. So where it says import, instead of importing from the MLS, we're actually going to go to Realist and we're going to import from the tax records. Now, when Brian first built this, and we love Brian, he's our chief, he's our CIO. He basically is the wizard behind all of the integration that you see here. And when he built this, he was so excited. He's like, now, Colleen, all you have to do is come in and put the tax ID in. And I looked at him and I said, agents don't memorize tax IDs. We know addresses. And he's like, oh, so here is your tip. You don't want to have to go look up information. You want this to be one-stop shopping, right? So we're going to go over to the magnifying glass. And we're only, this is the most important thing, we are only going to fill out 3 pieces of information. I promise you, if you fill out more, it will not work properly for you because tax records are very exact. So let me kind of tell you what I mean. You're going to fill out the county, the street number, and the route street name. This happens to be Wessel Drive, but we're going to leave off the drive. We're just going to do Wessel. The reason is if you put DR and the tax records spell out drive, you won't get a result. So you really just want to put in the county, the street number, and the root street name every time. As soon as you hit search tax data, that will pop right up, as you can see here. We're going to go ahead and select it, and we're going to start our transaction right from that public record data. So let's take a look. Once it opens, you're going to see it's now filling in all of that information, the tax number, the township, the year built, the lengthy legal description, all of that is coming over. The next thing you're going to notice, and I'm going to just jump over to step 3, is it's actually pulling in the seller's of records name as well. So if you're going to list this property, your listing agreements will already have Samantha and Anthony, in this case, they'll already be listed as the seller. Their names will be under the signature lines of the seller, and your Authentisign will be pretty ready to go. You won't have to do all of that tagging if you're using digital signatures. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to jump to step 4 because I want to show you a couple cool things here too. Of course, you can, just like we did before, you can put them in any order you want. You can preview them, you can mark them up, but I do want to show you one thing that's really hidden in here, and it's one of my favorite features, and it's the data sheet. Did you know that if you are going on a listing agreement or a listing appointment, I'm sorry, and you are filling in your listing agreement and all of your documents, did you know if you start filling out your data sheet, it can actually create your whole entire listing in Paragon for you with one click? I kid you not. A lot of people do not know this is here. It's one of my favorite features. But then I also know there are some brokerages who require the admin or the broker to actually go in and review the listing before it goes live. Now, the nice thing is the admins are set up in here so they can actually assist with that. So I like to kind of break this down because this is where people get a little glassy-eyed usually, and they're like, well, wait a minute. If I'm filling out the paperwork, I don't have the listing yet. So how does this work? So let me kind of explain. So I've pulled over all the information from the tax data, right? I've filled in all of my forms, but you're right, we don't have the listing signed yet. There are some things I'm not going to know enough to fill out this data sheet. Like I'm not going to know the final listing price. I mean, I know what I'd like it to be, but I don't know what the seller's going to agree on yet, right? Because we haven't signed. So other things we might not know, what are those room measurements? Now, if you've not taken Kubacasa yet, if you've not taken that class, that is a free product that I love. I've used it 14 times now, and it will actually, within a 5 to 7 minute scan, just walking through your listing, do you know it will measure all of the rooms for you? And I was kind of skeptical. I usually am not very trusting, I'm going to be honest. I actually went and got I built my home in 2001. I went and got my floor plan, and I actually looked to see on the floor plan, and then I compared it to Kubacasa to see how accurate it was. I was shocked. It was less than an inch off. It uses LiDAR. I don't know if you know what LiDAR is, but it's basically a scanning of the walls to measure the entire room. I was shocked how accurate it was, and quite honestly, I was shocked how easy it was. You get your results back usually in 12 hours. They say up to 24. I've gotten all mine back in 12. And you can literally copy and paste the room measurements into your data form. So going back to our real life workflow, we filled out all of our paperwork. We're marching in, we're going on our listing appointment, right? Our seller's now signing, and I've saved my data form. I'm doing my Kubacasa through the house. I got my room measurements. By the time, so let's say I'm going on my listing appointment at 6 at night, I'm going to put the listing in the morning. By the time I put my listing in the morning, I've got my Kubacasa measurements back. I open up the data sheet that you're looking at. I fill in those remaining pieces, like my measurements and my final listing price, anything additional I needed to add about the home that I may not have known. Then there is this upload listing button that you see at the top here. That's the key. That upload listing button is literally going to take all of the data, and I'm not going to fill out the whole data sheet, but I am going to show you kind of how it works. As long as you filled out the red, which are required, as long as you filled the required out, it is going to push all of that data over into a listing in Paragon, but it does a couple of things. So I'm going to click on upload that listing button just so you can kind of see the workflow. Now, if I had filled this all in, we could actually do this, but here's how it works. It creates a partial listing for you in Paragon. So when I did that, what it did is it pulled all of, and I'm just going to use my office here, it pulled over all of that data. Now my office admin, he can see any partial listings that have been started. So I could call Colleen, who happens to be my admin where I am, and I could say, you know what, I started Canyon Creek here, and I was just hoping you could upload the photos, or maybe could you check that so we could make that live? Or I could just go in, add the disclosures, and make it live. So basically what it does is it creates that partial. Now either myself or my admin can go in, add in any additional things, maybe add in your seller's disclosure, lead-based paint, any photos. Then all you have to do is hit save, and that listing is going to be live. It is so much easier than having to go back and fill all of this out in your data sheet and then go back into the MLS and fill out all that information again. It will bring all of that over. And by the way, it's a lot easier for your admins too. Not that long ago, I had a vacant piece of property that was $40,000 and it went in as $400,000. And I'm wondering, like, why is nobody interested in this property? It's a pretty good price. Well, the reason would be is, you know, admins, let's face it, they are so busy and they are so hardworking. They got people coming in for closings, right? They're scheduling appointments, they're answering agent questions, there's, you know, I mean, so they're doing a million things. So this is a way that you can actually send all the data over so that they can review it, hit save, and make it live. Or if you're like me and you just have OCD and you like to do it yourself, it allows you to push all that data over with one click. Then you can just add your photos and your disclosures and you're good to go. All right. There is some new functionality that came out in Authentisign that I want to show you, and it's changed. And so, matter of fact, I haven't even updated. It's so new. The change is so new. I haven't even updated it in our video library or our cheat sheets yet. So it used to be when I worked at ZipForm and helped create their digital form signing program, it used to be when you'd send documents out for your clients to fill out, like a seller's disclosure, the documents were open. So you could not have them fill out the seller's disclosure online and then sign it. And because in order for a document to be legal and binding, this is kind of the boring technicality stuff, but basically in order for a document to be legal and binding, it has to be a locked document and it has to meet the e-sign act requirements, which is a congressional act that says it can be legal and binding in 50 states if it does this. Has to show what computer they signed it on so it's trackable, has to go to a person so that they can receive it via email, meaning they had to get into their email. It has to also leave a timestamp. So there are all these requirements, but it basically had to be UTA compliant and e-sign compliant, which meant it had to be a locked document. If your clients were going in and they were filling it out, they could not sign it. Well, recently they made a really cool advancement that now in Authentisign allows your clients to fill out the disclosures even before you've got there for your listing appointment. They can fill them out and sign them in one step. So I do want to take you on that tour because it's brand new. Again, I haven't even had a chance to update all of the material yet, but I think you'll really, really like it. So you can see the listing and sales side, pretty easy. You're just going through that wizard, not hard. I'm going to go back to the other thing that I mentioned I would show you today, and that is I wanted to show you the dashboard. Remember how I said you can use the wizard each time, but after you do that a few times, you kind of know where everything is in the program, and you're like, I just wish I could do it from one easy dashboard. So let's take a look at that next. As I mentioned, that dashboard, we'll use Hawkins here, can allow you to do all the functionality in the wizard, but right from here. So anytime you open up a transaction, and let me just show you how I got there. I went to my transaction page. I used our fancy Hawkins listing here. And I'm now looking at my transaction dashboard. But here was my one problem with this. The technology company who made this never sold a house in their life because the stuff they had on your dashboard you would never ever use. So here's what you want to do. You want to unlock your dashboard by clicking this lock. They had things on here like the checklist, for example. Those are not things you're ever going to use in your dashboard. Most people don't even use checklists. So you want to actually open this up and you want to add the things that are going to be helpful. For instance, if you add the Authentisign box, did you know that anytime your client signs something in this transaction, it will automatically deposit it without you even touching it? It will automatically deposit that right back here. So anytime they sign anything, if you open this 5 years from now, you can go in and find all the signed docs for this transaction. So let me show you how to do that. All you're going to do is you're going to add things like your contacts. You're going to add Authentisign. You're going to add things like your documents, all the stuff that you would do right in the wizard. So I'm going to grab my Authentisign box. I'm going to put it right here at the top because that's one I use a lot. Of course, you can make these boxes larger or smaller so you can fit more or less on your dashboard. But remember how we added a contact? I'm just going to close this up so it doesn't shift around here. Remember how we added Barry Buyer? If I wanted to do that same step right from here, I just click on the plus, add a new transaction contact, and it gives you that same exact screen. So I would say Barry's wife, we'll call her Bertha Buyer. I know you probably love my names, right? All right, so, and then I would put her email address in. So same steps as you could do in the wizard. I just like to have them all laid out on the dashboard. If you do have any questions about setting up the dashboard, you're welcome to call me, or remember, you do get technical support that is available 7 days a week from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. And by the way, we support all of our products in-house. We are not going to send you to another country and another party who may or may not speak English. We don't do that. We actually support it in-house. A lot of times I take tech support calls. Brian takes tech support, Lisa, many of us. And so we can actually assist you. And the reason we do that is because a lot of times your question may stem in one problem, but it may lead to another product. Like, how do I get my listings from Paragon into cloud? Well, we don't want to send you to Paragon and then have to have you call cloud after that, right? So we actually support them in-house. Most everyone on our team has a real estate license, and most of them are actively selling, so that they can actually walk you through and possibly show you some time-saving tips that you may not know were there, and that's why we do that. So that's how to set up your dashboard. The other thing I promised I would show you is in the way of templates. Templates are going to be over here on the left side. So if your broker does not have any templates set up, you can create your own, and it's pretty simple. I would recommend, even for me, with my broker templates being like 600 forms long, which I do have to tell you, I think is a little ridiculous. Even if you have templates that are set up, check with your broker to make sure you're getting all of the required forms. And what I tell agents, the easiest way to set up your template, you know, those big ugly deal files. Matter of fact, I was just filling out my desk. I had a whole bunch of them I was going to get rid of. Those big ugly deal files we all have stuffed in our car or somewhere. Grab that and open it up and just go through it and make sure that you have all your broker required forms in your template so you're not missing anything. That's kind of the easiest way to do that. So I'm going to go over here to my transaction templates. And again, you'll see all these little icons right over here to the left. And there's a whole bunch of them. You're simply going to click on the icon. Usually it is the bottom or second from the bottom, depending on your staff level. And we're going to go to transaction templates. If your broker does not have any transaction templates, then here's how you're going to make your own. You can kind of tell too, if your broker has templates, you'll see two little entities by them. That means your office set those up. Those would be the ones I would start with. If you only see one entity, and you can name them, by the way, whatever you want, then you know that they're your personal templates. So I'm going to go in and I am going to say that I want to add a brand new template, and I am going to call it, just hide this so it's not in the way here. I'm going to call this Sandy Nelson's Awesome Listing Template. And I'm going to say that that's going to apply to residential listings. You can name them whatever you want. You can even put in a description. You can do them for your entire office as well. And then all you're doing is saving the name at that point. Now you can also bring outside documents into your templates. Remember we talked about those documents are outside things. So if Sandy has something about her company, and she wants that to automatically be part of her template for her office, she can add a new folder and call it Century 21 Town and Country Grosse Pointe Team Selling, or about her company, or how long she's been in business. All of that can be added. So you can add a document or a folder. You add the document the exact same way. You can simply drag and drop a document on, or if you want to search your computer, you can also just click on that blue bar. Let me show you that. Let's say it's on her desktop. She wants to pull it in. She could go in and add by simply clicking on this blue bar here, and she could find it on her desktop, and she could pull that in that quickly. Then what forms do you want to be part of your template? So remember, forms are already going to be there. You're just going to select the ones you want to use. So I'm going to say probably for Sandy's template, she's probably going to use the Grosse Pointe Forward forms. I'm going to open that up. And so let's say she's going to use for her listing, she's going to grab her listing form. There's a lot of forms in this one. I'm trying to find exclusive rate to sell quickly. Hopefully you get the, all right. So pass it, probably. We'll just grab a few just for the sake of time. I would be looking for the exclusive rate to sell, but for the sake of time, I'm just going to grab a couple here. And then that's how you would add. And you can add them in. Obviously, she would want to add in the My Real Source data form. You can add them in from different libraries. So maybe she's using some Century 21 Town and Country forms, some Grosse Pointe Forward forms, and maybe she's using, she's of course going to use the My Real Source data form and the copyright form. So I'm going to go grab the data form here. And so I'm going to use the disclosure. I'm going to grab my, and obviously you're going to grab the ones that your office recommends. So we're going to grab our business, this one residential. Sorry, I was looking for the residential one. And now we've got that data form that we'll upload. You don't even have to save it. All you want to do is you make sure that you have the appropriate forms and the appropriate documents set up. And then that's what you or your agents will see there going forward. Okay. All right, so let's get into everybody's favorite part, the new stuff. And that has to do with the signing, right? And that has to do with also sending out that seller's disclosure so that your clients can sign that. So let's take a look. I like to start on the left-hand side. You could start in multiple places. You could start in a transaction. You could start on a particular form. I kind of like to go right over here to the left here, click on the pen. And these are all of the transaction, all of the forms that are out for signing. It'll tell you what's completed. If it says draft, that means it never made it to your client. If it says expired, that means your client never signed it. They got it, but now it's expired. So let's actually start a brand new transaction. I'm going to show you the secret to making this really easy. If you click on add, all I want to do, I did all the heavy lifting in TransactionDesk, right? So all I want to do is I want to take the clients, the forms, and the documents, and now I want to email them out because I've already done all the filling out, all the heavy lifting is done. If you do it this way, you will save yourself so much time. So what I want to impress upon you is where this says optional, don't ever think of it as optional. Think of it every time as mandatory, and it will make your life so much simpler. So here's what you're going to do. So let's say we are sending our seller's disclosure to be filled out for 41539 Wessel Drive. And maybe I'm going to name it even seller's disclosure. And I want to tie that to the actual transaction so that every time they sign it, it goes right back in the file for me. I never have to look at it. I don't have to get it in my inbox and go move it. It comes right back to the file for me. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say I want to tie it to that specific transaction. And I want to now set up the signing. The easiest thing to do is kind of think of these little tabs over to the right as just what you're doing. We're going to add in our participants. Well, we already did that, right? We don't have to add us. We don't have to add our buyer. We did that or our seller. We did that when we were filling out the listing paperwork. So we're going to pick that we're adding right from the transaction. In this case, here's our seller. Of course, we are the listing agent. I pulled those from tax records. So they don't really have an email address because I pulled these from the tax records. So we'll add that in just a second. There's 3 ways that you can send things. You can send them as a remote signer, meaning that they can sign with their fingertip, they can sign on their phone, they can sign on their desktop. It's just coming to their email and they're going to sign it that way. But remember I said they added a new reviewer role. That's really for attorneys so that the attorney can go in and see the documents and either accept them, which allows it to go on to the attorney's client, or they can reject them and leave you a note of, hey, the client's name is spelled wrong, or hey, we can't close, we don't have the power of attorney document yet, whatever it happens to be. They can actually respond to you, the agent, so it doesn't inconvenience the buyer and they can't sign it because it's incorrect. So then there's the last one, which is the CC rule. This is not like CC on an email. So I just want to be clear. It's not going to just send a copy. The CC role in this program is set up for title companies, for lenders. And what it does is if everybody signs in the transaction that you set up, it can automatically deliver it with a personal message to the title company. For instance, maybe your clients are going through a divorce and maybe it's kind of not great and you want to let the title company know after they sign the purchase agreement to have separate rooms, please start title, and maybe you want to deliver that message to the title company. Or maybe you want to tell them, I already reminded them to bring a copy of their divorce decree, whatever it happens to be, you can actually CC that lender or that title company. They only get it if everybody signs. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to say we're going to make these remote signers just nice and easy for today's example. If you see these little red circles, remember how I said that we were pulling them in from tax records so it didn't have their email address? So we're just going to put in a fake email address here just for our sake of time here. Melanator.com. And then we will save that. And one of the interesting things here is you have to kind of think about the workflow. If Sandy Nelson is only working with her 2 buyers, she's only sending documents out to be signed from her 2 buyers, then Sandy doesn't need to worry about what order they go in, right? It can go to her 2 buyers, whoever signs it first, great. Now she's got it back and she can send it to the co-opting agent. However, let's say that Sandy also wants to include the co-opting agent. In that case, she would care what signing order they go in, right? Because she wouldn't want me, the co-opting agent, to get it before her buyer signed it. So in that case, where this little toggle is right here at the top where it says set signing order, that allows you to drag and drop the parties into the order that you want. Now be careful here. Because she was just the nicest lady. She recently attended my class, just got into real estate, and I'm literally driving home from the office, and she called me and she was in tears. I felt so bad. She said, I sent this to my buyer 12 times. He can't get it. He for some reason, it's not going through. I just felt so bad. I literally pulled over on the side of the road and opened up TransactionDesk to see what was going on. And what had happened was she had made herself the first signer. Okay, so remember that first in the signing order, that person has to sign it and complete it before it can go on to the next person. So poor thing. So as soon as we figured that out, I helped her put the buyer's name there. He got it immediately. So just remember, if you're using that signing order, remember it has to go in that logical order, especially if you are adding in the co-opting agent. You certainly don't want them getting it before your buyers have signed it. So you're putting them in that logical order, and that's it. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to tell the program, what are we sending them, right? We've picked our person. Now here's where it's really cool, because remember how I said it brings in not only the forms, but you see how the other documents, in this case, the referral form or the commission letter or survey or lead-based paint disclosure or seller's disclosure, all of those are coming right in here for you. If you forgot something, you can always upload it. You can even pull things from different files, like if you have a standard pre-approval, maybe Sandy sold them a house on 123 Main Street. Maybe the deal died. Well, she doesn't want to just change 123 Main Street. She wants to have a paper trail, right? That's the smart thing to do. So if she's a great agent, she found another agent, another house the next day. She now is going to grab that pre-approval and a copy of their EMD. She's going to grab that and pull it into her new transaction. So you can do that. And that's where the My Files comes into play. But literally everything that you're going to have them sign, you're just going to go through and you're going to select it. So if they are signing, let's say our exclusive right to list, I'm going to pull that in. They're signing our agency disclosure, simply going to pull that in. If they are signing our seller's disclosure, simply going to pull that in. So I'm just bringing in all of those documents that I am going to have that client sign. Okay, so hopefully that's making sense. They're now over here to the right. If you want to rearrange them, if you got all the way to the step, you forgot to do it, you can actually do it right here. So again, kind of funny, I want to put my disclosure at the top here. I can move that right into the order I want it in. The next thing, if let's say that you brought in a document or maybe you scanned in the document, I'm guilty of this, and maybe one of the pages is upside down. You can actually go into the document. You can remove a page with the document slicer, or if you just realized the other day I did this, just the last page, unfortunately, was upside down, right? So you can actually go in and you can rotate the documents by simply going to the document. You can see I'm turning the page around over here. You could delete a particular page if you didn't want that to be part. So you can always alter the documents as you need. And then last, we just want to make sure that all of those signing blocks are set up. Now for the association and MLS forms, those are already done for you. As you can see, when I go to my forms, I didn't have to do a thing. It literally placed all of the names in place. It placed all the dates in place. I bypassed that one for just a second. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here. And you can see on my listing agreement, it's got all the initials in place. But let's say that there's choices. Let's say Sandy's saying, well, do you want a lockbox or don't you want a lockbox? Well, that's where those tools over here come into play. And there's some ones I just want to show you very quickly, like the radio choice button. This is good if you're asking them, do you want a home inspection or don't you want a home inspection? Do you want a home warranty or don't you want a home warranty? So the radio choice button allows them to only pick one of those options, and you can add more. Maybe there's 3 options you want to give them. So it only allows them to pick one and it grays out the other. If they go back and they click on one, it will gray out the opposite one. So they can change their mind, but they can only select one. Of course, you can go in, you can add things like drop downs. Maybe there's a particular form and it asks them to, I agree or I do not agree, and you want to add that in a drop down underneath. You can do that as well. You can, of course, just add additional signatures if they're signing in. Maybe we had that counter offer place on the previous one. I think I did that on this one, but maybe where you're countering, you want their initials. So all you have to do is drag those tags right onto the form. Of course, if you've selected 3 signers, it's going to make sure that you have a place for all 3 signers to sign or initial before it will allow you to send it. If you got all the way to this point, and I did this the other day, and you forgot to counter something, there's also some markup tools for the agent. So I can go down here to the markup tools and I could say, oh, geez, I got all the way here. I forgot to cross off the home warranty. Don't worry. You can still do that right from here. You can click on that line tool and you can cross off something right from here. So if you got all that way, you don't have to start all over. You can actually do that right from Authentisign. Then last, once you have signatures in place for everybody, you can do custom messages for each party. Maybe I want to tell Anthony, congratulations on the job promotion, and can't wait to help you buy your next house, whatever it happens to be. You can put that right in the custom invitation, as well as if you were sending it to the title company or lender as a CC. And then last, you click send and your documents are off and running. So I just want to make sure that I added myself as the first here real quick, because I do kind of want to show you what they're going to see when they get it. But before we do that, so we'll give that a second to go ahead and send. It takes about 30 seconds to send that out. But what I do want to talk about really quick is that brand new feature. And I think I can do it. I got like 1 minute left. I think I can get it in. When you are sending the seller's disclosures, with the seller's disclosures, and I'll just try to I'm going to grab one and just do that individually just so you can kind of see it. That seller disclosure document is now your clients can actually fill that out and sign it at the same time. It used to be done from TransactionDesk. Now you can only do that from Authentisign. So I'm going to try to quickly find it here and I'll just show you exactly what I mean. It's just easier to show you, I think, than tell you. What makes this work is that you do have to put that the person is a seller. Once you add that there is a seller, and you put the seller's contact information, it will immediately open that document so they can A, fill it out, and B, sign it at the same time. So let's take a look. So I'm on the document right here. I'm going to click this pen. Remember, I said there's multiple ways that you can go into the signing application. I'm going to click on that pen. So right now you can see this document is locked, right? They wouldn't be able to, they'd be able to sign it if I dragged a signature onto it, but you can see, well, right now they can't really fill anything out. So here's what you want to do. You want to add a seller. So we are going to add a new party. We're going to call her Sally, the seller. And we are going to send it. I'm going to send it to my email real quick so that you can see what it looks like when they get it. But the most important part, remember I told you, is you want to make sure that you label this person the seller. Because as soon as you add a seller, it's going to open up that doc so that they can not only fill it out and add the text, so they'll be able to type, what, and they can even type over here or here, what insulation it has. Has there been any water in the basement? They can actually fill those lines in, but it also allows them to sign it in the same step. But the key is if you don't put that the person is a seller, when you're sending this document, they will not get it. And they will not get it in that format that is open so that they can fill it out. So you do have to send that it is a seller filling it out, and then it will know, oh, well, let's send that in an open format. So not only do they get it, they can fill it out and sign it in one step. All right, I do see we got a couple questions, and then we will go ahead and conclude. Are you able to send the recording of this session in case we forget how to get there? Absolutely. I will try to send it to everybody on the call. If I miss you, shoot me a quick email back and just remind me, but I will try to send it to everybody on the call. Sometimes people have more than one email addresses that they register with. But absolutely, I'll be happy to send it to everybody who's in attendance. It does take me about 24 hours, so give me about 24 hours to upload and edit it and get it on our channel, and that way I can send that link to you, so it'll just be a real quick link. So when, lastly, what does it look like when the signing starts happening? What does it look like when your clients get it, and when they're going to fill it out? So let me just quickly show you. I'm kind of a visual person. I like to see the finished product, right? So when your clients get it, this is what it's going to look like. It is going to be a signing invitation. It will have your branding. It'll have your contact information. And it will say Colleen DeLange. It comes from you, by the way. You'll notice my name is here because they don't know who Authentisign is, right? They don't know who TransactionDesk is. They just know you and you're their great agent. So they're looking for paperwork from you. So it does come from you. And all they have to do is click Start Signing. Sorry, I have my security on for work, but now they can go in. As you can see, they can only pick one, right? Because it's a radio choice button. They can't pick all of them because that would be a hot mess. They don't know what to do. They can go in, they can fill out those blanks. And then down below, you can see that they can also sign it in that step. It will automatically generate a signature for them. However, if they prefer to draw, I'm not very good at this, but if they prefer to draw it with their own signature with their finger, as you can see I'm doing on my screen, they can do that as well, and they can set that as their signature. If they have a unique digital signature that they've already uploaded, they can actually use that too. So most people just use the one that's set up for them, and then they set their signature. That's going to allow them to go in, fill it out completely, and sign it in the same step. Okay, so I know that was a lot. So thank you for hanging in there with me. Again, just as a quick recap, you can find this entire recording starting tomorrow under the resources section. If you do have any other questions, now would be a great time to put them in the questions box. And I'm also going to ask you, I like to send a survey after, just letting us know how we did. Did we answer all of your questions? I know a lot of times, especially with this class in particular, it's a lot of information in a short amount of time. So hopefully, if you did ask a question, hopefully I answered it correctly for you. I only got a couple of them. If you do have any other questions, there'll be a place on the survey where you can ask it and I can answer it there too. So hopefully you enjoyed the tour of TransactionDesk and Authentisign. I don't see any other questions. So one last recap, you can go under resources, find the entire recording under education, recorded webinars, and you can find future classes coming up too. So thank you so much for your time, and I hope you have a great day and happy selling, everybody.